Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss some of the arguments for electoral reform coming from a mixture of experts and MPs at the Electoral Reform APPG in Westminster last night, as it was announced that the group of MPs pushing for fair elections is now the largest group in Parliament. So what were the main arguments? Why is there optimism that we may finally be getting somewhere? But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So what I'll do is I'll discuss briefly some of the main arguments brought up by speakers at the all-party parliamentary group for fair elections, which included speeches from MPs representing Labour, Lib Dems, Green Party. However, as my journey to London yesterday was cursed at every step, without boring you with the inane details, I missed the first two speeches from Labour's Alex Sobel and the Greens' Ellie Chowns. So if they said anything insanely witty, sorry. Blame our knackered railway system. Though I want to mention first that the APPG for fair elections is now the largest. Now, these are groups where MPs of all parties can just work together to promote common aims. There are lots of them. There are lots of them. But the Electoral Reform Group has 134 MPs. This is more than any other. And if that doesn't sound like enough, I feel there's like 650 MPs. That's a bit pathetic, isn't it? Remember, it's not just 134 MPs in favour of electoral reform. It's 134 MPs so in favour that they'll join a group to put their shoulders behind it. Many more are also in favour, but it's like, yeah, I've got other priorities. For example, the Lib Dems are formally in favour, so you would think all Lib Dem MPs would be in it, but they're not. They're also by convention formed by like backbench MPs, so there's no ministers in them, even though they can also be in favour. So electoral reform is essentially the biggest cause that MPs want to get involved in right now. So anyway, first speaker I heard was Professor Rob Ford, a political scientist at the finest university in existence. He pointed to a pattern of fragmentation going back decades. I've talked about this before. Time to bring out Old Faithful. So this shows the share of the vote won by Labour and the Conservatives combined for each general election in my lifetime, going back to 1979. As you can see, although last year's election was the most broken ever in Britain in terms of seats to vote share ratio, Labour won 63.4% of the seats with just 33.7% of the vote. But it wasn't an unusual year. We're going to have to get used to these sort of things. It just follows the trend going right back to when I was a toddler. So if the little spikes were just when elections were about single issues, but as soon as those elections become about the usual issues, the trend carries on as normal. And if you're thinking like you're looking at Reform UK and thinking, they only need to get about 30% to get a majority. Remember, that 33% that Labour got gave them a ridiculously high majority. They don't need a government doesn't need a majority anywhere near that large. So you could get a majority, a decent majority on like 30% of the vote here. And you look at the polls, you go, well, Reform UK could get 30% of the vote. Yeah, that's the seriousness we're in here. The point being made is we've got now 5 political parties that are all attracting major shares of the vote across Britain, plus an extra one in Scotland and Wales doing the same. First past the post cannot work with such a multi-party system. Like in England, you've got 5 parties all getting large shares of the vote, and in Scotland and Wales, respectively, 6 in each of those as well. It's not just that it's unfair because not everyone works the same. It's that it cannot even function. Ford said that MPs will increasingly win with smaller and smaller shares of the vote. We're already getting people winning with 25% vote shares. That's not a mandate. But I would go further. Look at Donald Trump right now. Why is he rushing ahead so recklessly with his plans? Because he's working on a very tight schedule. He thinks he has to get everything done in 2 years flat, otherwise the midterms will destroy him. In the UK, our first past the post system allows for no tweaks of the sort which happened in the most recent elections in Ireland and Germany, where it's basically the same government, just in slightly different change around. We swing between very different parties. The consequences of this is that in 1997, which is the first time I experienced a change of government, Labour made huge changes, massive, completely turned the country around. Then in 2010, the Conservatives made huge changes, completely turned the country around. Then last year, Labour again have started making massive changes. Like every single time we get a change of government, it's so different to the last one. It seeks to reverse lots of what the other government did and really push ahead with things that the other government didn't want to do at all. Now imagine changes of government, not every 15 or so years, but every 5 years. Governments like Trump will be in a much more of a rush to be making massive changes all the time, only to lose an election and another lot come in and reverse them all and do loads of other stuff. You'll just end up with periods of massive reforms, but no stability. It will be endless reform, no payout, because there won't be enough time for it to pay out before the next government comes in and changes it all again. But a representative system allows voters to say, look, okay, you're not completely hopeless, right? We don't want to throw it in full reverse. Let's just shift the balance of power a bit, see if we can nudge things along. New Labour MP for Sheffield Central, Abtisam Mohammed, talked about the lack of engagement from the public that she's perceived, including from her own brother, that's been growing in recent years as a result of people just not feeling their vote mattered. This is because most seats are usually very safe, whereas in a proportional system, the balance of party power in different areas will fluidly fit changes in voter attitudes. That doesn't happen with first past the post. You can have someone in a safe, they can win with 70% of the vote one year. Oh, stunningly safe seat, 70% of the vote. The next election, they may get 40% of the vote. Well, that's a huge change in voter attitude, but they still win the seat. So there's actually no change. Those voters didn't actually see any change in the way they changed their vote. You can see why so many voters don't feel engaged. And my personal issue with this is it gives more power to those fanatically involved in politics, like myself, because those of us who really get into politics, that we will vote all the time because we understand the power of voting. It's like more moderate voices, they sort of out of the equation. But the electoral reform group's not just about how votes should translate into seats. So they call, for example, the APPG for fair elections, not just electoral reform, because it also pushes other things. There's how to deal with dodgy political funding. Lib Dem MP, Manuela Petagella, was making the point that if a few people are pumping lots of money into politics, that is also an example of where not everyone's vote counts the same. For example, let's pick on the most notorious donor of the last few years, Frank Hester, the one who called for the murder of an MP because she happened to be a black woman. He donated £15 million to the Conservatives recently. Now, which voter has the most influence on a Conservative government? Someone who just puts their tick in the Conservative box in Slough, or the guy who bungs you 15 million quid as well? And the same applies to other parties as well. It's not just about the Conservatives. And as Manuela said, the situation is much worse when the money is coming from foreign actors. I'll go further. Vladimir Putin has more say in British politics than any British voter who's not an MP. So the group also have aims of tightening up the rules on donations, loopholes closed for foreign donations, but also donation caps from genuinely eligible donors as well. The current system is politics rigged by wealth, she said. Then Scottish Labour MP Blair McDougall was talking about how democracy and the rule of law has been eroded in the last decade around the world, and that we are not immune. You know, he described the war against authoritarianism globally as one we're losing. And I suspect he would still have said that even if America had held strong. He particularly talked about the abuse of social media being something we have the power to deal with. Mind you, as well as seeing social media as a threat, which of course it absolutely is, we've seen that, I do wish I could persuade more MPs of its power for good as well. Gives a northern monkey like me a voice that the BBC never would have, even if it had been my ambition. Yes, bad faith actors are also using it. But the answer to that is not just regulation, we need that, but also for more genuine people who want to promote truth and unity to use it as well. But his overriding point was that we should not take democracy for granted as if it's always going to be there. And I think anyone looking at America should see the wisdom in those words. Like, it's easy for us in Europe to look at, say, countries in Africa or Asia where democracy is pared back. We go, oh, that's their culture, that's course. It couldn't happen to us. It is happening to us. We're seeing it in Hungary. We're definitely seeing it in America. How can we say it can't happen in the UK if it can happen in the USA? People need to realise a Reform UK government may not just be monumentally bad for the country, then go to the polls next time and lose. It may be motivated to copy Trump and strip democracy away in the UK so that they don't lose the next election. We're not immune. So what can you do if you want to get involved, even in a small way? Well, you can join one of the groups which lobbies government, such as Labour Campaign for Electoral Reform, Make Votes Matters, Movement Forward and so on. You can ask your MP if they are a member of the Fair Elections APPG. Even if your MPs are Conservative, give it a crack. After all, first past the post actually risks destroying them now that Reform UK are on the scene. You know, the Tories at the moment are talking about the existential threat faced them. They would not be facing an existential threat if we had a proportional system right now. I would argue the Conservatives should actually now be in favour of a change of a system. It's not just that first past the post is hurting them now. They may imagine, oh yeah, but we'll grow back. You might not. Reform UK could easily stay on top in the right wing. The Conservatives could genuinely be finished. But with a representative system, they would be competing again. Obviously, if your MP is a minister, they're not going to be involved, but you could still open up a dialogue. I mean, remember, ministers have to toe a certain line given to them. It doesn't hurt to make arguments, though, because the problem we have now, as Professor Ford put it, is that elections of the future are basically like slot machines. When you've got such a large difference between vote share and seat share from our current system, the results will be largely down to luck. Like the first past the post system, if you had just two parties and people only ever voted for one of those two parties, you would have a situation where the gap between vote share and seat share would be much, much smaller. But now it's not. It's huge. I mean, you're going from 30% of the vote to like 60% of the seats. Like, one argument is that some might be reluctant because they'd have to relearn electoral strategy. They're having to do that now anyway. Labour's current failures are in no small part down to the fact they are trying to apply old methods to a completely new system because the system's already changed. A first past the post system without the two-party hegemony is a very different beast. And no, PR would not favour Reform UK, but that is an explanation for another video. I wanted to just focus on the arguments and my additional thoughts brought up at the group in Parliament yesterday. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.